Welcome to the Just Jamie podcast. And what if I told you that you were about to spend time with someone who watched I Love Lucy reruns with Meryl Streep, helped Paul Newman in his kitchen, had lunch with Katharine Hepburn, walked out on Calvin Klein's balcony and discussed the beauty of the New York City skyline, played a Chopin ballad on Lionel Richie's Steinway, and then figured out beautiful Elizabeth Taylor's skin secret with sesame oil? That is one and the same. My next guest, the best-selling author Glenn Plaskin, who I was blessed to work with many moons ago, and we kept in touch all these years later. Welcome, Glenn.
Jamie, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Oh, well, thank you so much. And I same to you. It literally feels like 15 years has not gone by. So as we were saying that you could never have scripted those sort of quintessential Hollywood moments that you've had, and what a blessed life. But I think probably the best place for us to start is at the beginning. How the heck did you kind of get where you are? Tell us how it all began for you.
Well, as I was telling you, when I was in fourth grade, I was getting all D minuses and Fs.
Oh.
And I wasn't paying attention. And my mother was very angry at me. She didn't think I was trying hard enough. So she told the principal to take an IQ test. And he called us in one day and he said, "Your son has a low IQ,
Oh, gosh.
but garbage collectors can be happy too." Now, you should never say such a thing to a child, even if it were true. And I wasn't doing well in school. I later did get straight A's, by the way, by high school. But at this point, I wasn't doing well because I wasn't paying attention.
Right.
But I did have one talent, which was the piano, which I ultimately went to college for 9 years as a classical pianist. But I also kept dreaming and visualizing the idea of these stars, whether it was Jacqueline Kennedy or whether it was a movie star. I don't know why, but I couldn't get enough of these people. And so when I went to college for 9 years, after the piano part of my life was over, I didn't know what to do for a living. I thought, well, what am I going to do? And I got an idea to write a book. Now, I had never written anything, not even a college paper. Remember, I was in a conservatory of music.
Okay.
Well, at that time, the most famous classical pianist in the world was Vladimir Horowitz, who people may or may not know now. But anyway, he was then. And I decided I would write his book. Well, I knew nothing about writing a book, but I tell people that if you've got an idea and if you've got a brain, you can try to make it true. So I went to the William Morris Agency, ultimately, which was, of course, the top place you could go. And they said, "Well, what have you written?" I said, "Nothing." They said, "Well, what do you had published?" I said, "Nothing." And he said, "Then what do you have?" And I pulled out of my pocket a list of all the publishers that I had gone to on my own, telling them that I was writing a book. It was like, if you say you're writing a book, you may not be writing one, but I'm telling you I am writing one. So to make a long story short, he did sell my idea, because I always tell people, you're not selling yourself, you're selling your idea.
Mm-hmm.
And my idea was a good one. So he sold, and back then I came to New York with no friends, no money, no job, no anything. And within 6 months of coming, he got me a deal to write this book for the equivalent of what would be $330,000 in today's money.
Oh, my goodness.
So to go from a student in a college to a book deal, 5.5 months later, it's very unusual. And it's true that you couldn't duplicate this story. Even if you planned this, you couldn't do it. But it did happen. And when the book came out, even though Jacqueline...
you were about 26, right, at this time?
When this all started, I was around 25. Yeah.
25. Okay. But you have a Netflix, your life could be a Netflix story, first of all. But this is incredible. Go on.
Oh, it would get very low ratings, I think.
Oh,
but anyway, the book was published. Eventually, it took 3 years to do this.
Wow.
This was not easy.
Okay.
Remember, this was a huge learning curve. I don't mean to make this sound like it was easy, because it wasn't. But I did have a natural ability to write, and I was a very good interviewer. I interviewed hundreds of people for this book. And slowly I got a little credibility because the New York Times started publishing my interviews with classical musicians. Anyway, when the book was published, it literally was on the front page of the New York Times Arts and Leisure and the Washington Post and the Chicago Tribune and the Los Angeles Times. It was all over the place. Newsweek magazine, the Wall Street Journal, it was all over. And suddenly it was like a dream come true. I just turned 30 when it was published. And it was literally like seeing the world. First you're seeing it in black and white, and then I was seeing it in color. At the book party, my mother was there, and she was so happy because the New York Times and the New York Post and the New York Daily News and Women's Wear Daily were all covering my party, you know. And what happened after that is I basically needed a job, so I started doing celebrity interviews. And the first one was Calvin Klein, who at this time was the most famous, one of the most famous fashion designers in the world, and the hottest, most likely, at that time. And we did this interview, and we got very close as friends. And the interview made a lot of headlines, which helped. And then he picked up the phone one day, and he got me a job at Women's Wear Daily. And I started interviewing famous people. And for the next 10 years, it was one after the other. Elizabeth Taylor and Katharine Hepburn and Nancy Reagan at the White House and Diana Ross and many others. And it literally was like a dream come true in a way, because after all, remember, I have a low IQ. Imagine what I could have done if I had a higher IQ, you know. So I did my best, and I did have one ability, which was probably my best ability. It wasn't my writing. My writing was fine. It was my ability to make people relax and to confide in me how they're actually feeling. For example, when I was in the White House, President Reagan had been shot a few years earlier, and she was very emotional in this interview about what happened and how she handled it emotionally. And I remember that eye-to-eye contact with her, which you can't, duplicate.
Sure.
And I remember having lunch once with Diana Ross, and at one point in this long 2-hour interview, she started getting kind of teary and crying because she was talking about how racism had impacted her motion picture career. That back in the 1970s, it was very rare to have a black actress starring in a movie. It was not common the way it could be now.
Sure.
And this was a human moment. Here's this woman who's enormously famous and talented and successful. And yet, if you know how to talk to her, you could draw out her vulnerability. Yes. And this is what I discovered with each of these people. They have vulnerabilities. And I never approached an interview trying to make it sensational. What I was trying to do was to get inside. How did you feel? And how did you do it? So no matter who it was, most of the time I was able to naturally, I didn't work at this, I could naturally kind of relax into the situation so that the person themselves would feel, maybe they looked at me like, oh, he doesn't seem too bright, so I'll just talk to him. I don't know. I mean, I was not threatening in any way. I was kind of nice, and I was kind of funny. I would make jokes. Sometimes I would bring gifts. I would bring Katharine Hepburn. I used to bring chocolate because she loved chocolate, and she was one of my all-time favorites. Here's this woman who won 4 Oscars and who's a legend.
Yeah.
And when I met her, it was very scary. Oh my God. But I did it.
And so do you feel like from, that moment with Calvin Klein where you had, you gained his trust and you had credibility, that he really, sort of other celebrities trusted you with their vulnerable moments, and that, did sort of word get out that you were this trusted, kind source, that you were never going to try to get the gotcha moment? And do you think that sort of opened one door after the other, or?
Well, that didn't hurt. there was a certain momentum to the interviews. I think sometimes people thought, well, if Diana Ross did it, I'll do
Right.
it. Or
Okay.
if Calvin Klein did it, I'll do it.
Okay.
Not always. This didn't always work. But there were only a few people I didn't get. I remember I tried once to get Frank Sinatra, and I didn't. I don't know why. I mean, it had nothing to do. Remember, none of this has anything to do with me. When famous people do interviews, they're doing it for publicity.
Right.
This is why they're doing it. They don't know who the interviewer is. They don't
I
care.
understand.
So they're really, I never took this personally. So when I say I tried to get Frank Sinatra, what I mean is his many people around him decided he didn't want to do an interview for the New York Daily News and the Tribune Company, which is what I worked for. But it had nothing to do with me. But most of the time, most people said yes, and I just had as much fun as I could. Joan Rivers was one of my most favorite and the funniest. And I interviewed her a number of times, and she even agreed to host one of my book parties. So that was very exciting. And Ivana Trump, and even before Donald Trump was president, I knew him very well. We met in 1988 backstage at the Phil Donahue show.
Okay.
And then I did a cover story interview with him in 1989. And then I did another one for Playboy magazine on the cover, which still is on the cover of it's on the wall in his office at Trump Tower. He loves this Playboy interview. And then we did others, and I interviewed his wife, Ivana Trump, and then I interviewed his second wife, Marla Maples. So I agree with what you said. There was a certain momentum that would happen, because if somebody knew me, they would say, oh, well, I did an interview with him. Why don't you do it?
Sure. Sure. Now, with each kind of person, like Katharine Hepburn and Audrey Hepburn, all the people you worked with, was there ever the thing that you're like, did you ever have that moment like, I've made it? Or did the goalpost kind of always move? And because you didn't take it personally, was there ever a sense of accomplishment, or was it just perfect timing that they had a project that they were pitching and wanted to do the interview? Like, did you ever have that holy moment, I've made it?
Well, I wouldn't say those words, I've made it, because that would make me sound conceited. But I was fully aware of what I was doing from the beginning. Even in my 20s, I fully understood that this was scary, and it was exhilarating, and it seemed overwhelmingly, prodigious to me. But I kept trying to climb the next mountain. I kept thinking, I could interview Paul Newman. Oh, well, after that one, I could do this one. And I was actually quite anxious and nervous at times, because trust me, it is not easy going to interview these people. First of all, it takes weeks of preparation to get all the questions together and to formulate what you want to do. And then you have to literally show up at Yoko Ono's apartment to interview her. Then you have to go back and listen to the tape, transcribe the tape, and then write the article. It's a long process that is very nerve-wracking. It was to me. So I was not really relishing so much in what I had accomplished as I was working my hardest to do the next thing. And then I was also good at promoting stuff. Like when my Turning Point book came out, it was a column I wrote. I was next to Ann Landers and Joyce Brothers every Monday, and I wrote a column about how a famous person overcame a crisis in their life, whatever it would be. Well, ultimately, I collected 120 of these interviews in a book. And Dolly Parton was in the book, and Katharine Hepburn and Elizabeth Taylor and many others. And I then promoted the book on 6 TV shows, including Oprah Winfrey, who did a whole show on the book, and Larry King on CNN, and Joan Rivers and 3 others. But anyway, if you think this is nerve-wracking, it sounds like fun, and it kind of is fun, but only later. While you're actually doing it, it's like, I wanted to do this stuff, and I thought it was fun. I thought it was fun. But for someone who came from where I came from, Buffalo, New York, where there were no celebrities, where I didn't do well in school, to go from there to the White House or to wherever, it's very improbable. I sometimes think to myself, how in the world did I do that? I don't even know. But I did have this one ability among a few others, but the main thing I was able to do was make the person feel comfortable.
So, but what if we could just back up to even just your classical training as a pianist? What made you pivot from music, where you had spent so many years, and what made you pivot to writing?
That is a strange thing. I intended fully to be a pianist, classical, and I was quite good. I mean, I did go get a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, I've done a doctoral program, and I studied with a couple famous teachers, famous in that world, but not famous. And then I got to the point when I was 25 or 26 when I realized it's like reality hit me. I don't even like performing. It
Oh,
makes me
wow.
too nervous. And I hated people looking at my fingers from the side. And I thought, am I going to spend the rest of my life teaching other people how to play the piano? And that's exactly what was going to happen. My professor told me, you will get a job teaching, and then you can perform from time to time. And I knew in that moment, I already knew it anyway, that I wasn't going to achieve what I thought I wanted, even though I
Okay.
really didn't want it. Sometimes you
Sure.
might want something in life, and then when you get close to getting it, you realize, I don't even want it.
Yes, yes.
It could be like in love or something. So I told my mother, I quit. And she
What?
said, you can't quit. We put so much money into your musical education. And I said, I quit. And I moved to New York City, as I said, and I had this dream about writing a book, which was very improbable. Remember, I had never written anything.
Right.
And yet I thought, how glamorous to write a book. I just thought it was glamorous to try it. I had no ability to do it. I didn't know how to write a book. But I did hire a teacher after I got the book deal.
Okay.
And he taught me, and I had an editor, and I had a helper. I had people who would help me and show me, and eventually I got better at it. So when you say, how did you go from music to writing? Well, they both involve moving your fingers, but that's about it. And if you tried to plan this out the way what I did, I don't think you could.
Don't you think there's something to that, where if you had told me all those years ago when we were working together that we'd be talking in this setting, I would have said you were crazy. Where I think, when you get so close to something, right, that, you find out, wow, the thing I've been striving for isn't even what I want. So I think it takes an incredible amount of courage to pivot and then tell, your parents who have paid for all of this schooling, and that you're going to embark on this thing that you don't even know if it's just a dream. It sounded glamorous, but I think a lot of people are afraid to fail. So they take that safe route, the thing they're supposed to do or what's expected of them. And, obviously this is an incredible outcome, but you would have been miserable in the predictable. So you tried something to make you happy, and it turned into this career, which is pretty epic, if you ask me. I know you don't want to sound conceited. I'll say it for you, but you have really forged quite a path. But I think how many people watching this are thinking, I'm in that same place. I've worked really hard to get to X and I'm miserable. What do I do? And, kind of, if anybody takes anything away from this conversation, I hope it's the permission you give yourself to pivot to whatever that might be.
As Tony Robbins once told me, desperation is the mother of invention.
Mm-hmm.
If you feel like you really can't stand the way things are anymore, and you've got to find another path forward. Sometimes, I know what you're talking about being practical and everything, but when you're 25 or 26, you're not that practical. And I wasn't. And he said that if you're desperate, you'll change something.
Mm-hmm.
So I really needed a change, and I hated what I was doing. So I thought to myself, well, I'll write a book.
Yeah.
Never did I think that my specialty, according to what people would later write about me in interviews and newspapers and stuff, my specialty became celebrity interviews.
Mm-hmm.
And the more famous, the better. I was shooting for the stars. I always say, I don't start at the bottom. You can either start at the bottom and work your way up, or you can start at the top and do that. And for some strange reason, I decided to just try to start at the top. So it wasn't like I didn't go to journalism school. Nobody ever taught me how to, I don't have any college degrees in this. I just learned how to do it, by doing it.
Right.
And I thought, what a treat if I could get an interview with Elizabeth Taylor. I mean, remember she was one of the biggest stars in the world. And when I met her, it was a hot summer day, and I had been waiting for like 2 hours. She was always late.
Oh,
And
okay.
finally, they said she's ready. And I came up to her hotel suite, and she was in a duplex. So she made her entrance by coming down the stairs. And she looked just the way you would hope Elizabeth Taylor would look. She
Right.
looked beautiful. And she came right up to me and shook my hand. And the first thing I said to her is, "You have such beautiful skin." And she said, "Oh, thank you." She said, "My secret." I said, "What is your secret?" And she said, "My secret is sesame oil."
Mm.
And she said, "Would you like to touch it?" I thought, what? I'm going to touch Elizabeth Taylor's face? So she started putting my hand on her face, and it was very soft. And I said, "Wow, that sesame oil really works." And then I looked down at her hand, and I said, "Is that the ring?" She had this famous ring, the Krupp diamond, which was 33 carats, I think. And she said, "Yeah, would you like to see it?" And she took it off her hand and just tossed it to me. I'm holding the Krupp diamond, and I looked at it, and I said, "Would you like it back?" And she said, "Yeah."
Yeah.
And then just this little 5 minutes of chatting relaxed the situation, so that by the time we sat down on the couch and she started telling me all these very personal things about her life and about her marriages and about Rock Hudson dying of AIDS and all this stuff, she was really just booming. And it was such a, memorable 2 hours. So those were the kinds of things that I liked to do.
Now, did you ever have this long conversation with someone, and then did they ask you to leave anything out at the end that maybe face to face they felt comfortable saying something, but maybe had second thoughts after and asked you to leave something out? Or was it always on the record and up to you to sort of craft it into a narrative?
Well, it was all being recorded, so they knew they were being recorded. But, excuse me, it only happened once. I won't even say who it happened with, but
Sure.
there was one famous person that has told me something in, well, I was about to say in confidence, but when you're recording and you're a journalist, there's no such thing as in confidence, obviously.
Right.
But she later regretted saying it.
Okay.
And she had somebody very influential call up my boss and try to persuade them not to put it in.
Okay.
But it wasn't changed.
Okay.
And it did not create any problem, by the way. Nobody even seemed to notice it.
Sure.
But imagine, sometimes people might tell you something and then later think, "Oh,
that's what I was
maybe
wondering.
I shouldn't have said that." And I'm always censoring myself because, there are some inside things I might know, or the things that happened that I wouldn't repeat.
Sure.
So I'm good at kind of filtering that out of my own self. But sometimes people would say things every once in a while that seem very personal,
Right. Now, and I don't want to name, did you ever meet someone that was just an utter disappointment? Whether you had it in your mind that you thought they were very different, or were they rude or brusque, and just really a disappointment to you?
Oh, I know what you mean. That rarely happened.
Okay.
It happened. I was once in an interview with a former pop star, teenage pop star. What was his name? I can't remember his name. And he was on the phone when I got there, and he kept talking and talking. And it was like 20 minutes after we were supposed to start, and he's still on the phone. And I did something I've never done in my life. I just got up and left.
Oh, nice.
And I was angry because I thought, how rude to just keep me waiting and talking on the phone in front of me.
Sure.
However, it probably would have been better if I didn't. But that was the one time in my life when I thought, oh, forget it. And he wasn't even a big star. I didn't even care about him. So, and when I got back to the office, his agent called me and said, "What happened?" And I said, well, I left. But that's the only time among hundreds of interviews that I ever felt. And when you and I met, I had written a book about my dog.
Yes, yes.
And you worked for this great company that produced the publication party.
Mm-hmm.
So you were on the team helping me, and I was so grateful, because to put on a event for a book is not an easy thing to do. And that
You
event
made
that
it
you were
easy.
talking, well, I don't know that I did, but that event took almost a year of planning. And Calvin Klein, as you remember,
Yes.
was the host of the party. And Judge Judy came to the party,
Mm-hmm.
and we had the police commissioner and
Yeah.
a whole bunch of
It
other
was
kinds of
such a great
people.
event.
And we had more than 300 people, and you were part of that. You made it happen at that store, Mackenzie Child, right?
Yeah, right in New York, it was their flagship location. Yeah.
On Fifth Avenue, and they ran a red carpet from the street to the store.
Sure
It was
did.
so exciting, and you did a great job in pulling it all together. I don't know how you did it.
It took a village. It's always a team where, like you were saying, there's always great people, with you, next to you, behind you. It took a lot of people, but and it was such a blessing for me, because now fast forward 15 years, and I was just looking back at the pictures, knowing we were going to talk today, Calvin Klein in front of the step and repeat, and we had kind of buglers out on the street, and it was such an incredible thing. And in the planning, I have all these fun pictures of you bringing Katie into the store and me getting to cuddle the dog at work. So what better?
Oh, thank you. You'll have to send me a couple of those pictures.
Oh, I will. And I mean, what better thing to get paid to play with the dog? I mean, hello.
The dog you're thinking of was actually Lucy.
Oh,
Katie
I'm
was
so sorry. That's right. Katie Up
No,
and
that's
Down the
okay.
Hall was the book. Yes, Lucy. Yes, yes.
Katie was my first dog, and she was the subject of the book, but it was actually Lucy who was there.
That's right, Lucy.
Excuse me, as a puppy.
Mm.
Yeah, unfortunately, Lucy just went to heaven in May. So it's kind of a momentous 15 years later.
It is,
But
and sorry, and I knew when we were planning this episode, I have just lost my plum, and I knew we were going to sit and just trying to pick a date where I wouldn't just burst into tears, because, it's like you said, it's so heart-wrenching to lose your fur baby. They're part of your family, and I needed to be able to get through the interview or the conversation without crying. So I know
how you feel. I've gone through it twice myself, and it's funny. Some people will say, "Oh, my aunt or my uncle died," and barely impacted them. But then, if your dog dies, it can be worse than a relative, and it's very eerie, kind of, without her. But getting back to that event, it was a perfectly produced book event. We had, all kinds of reporters and TV people, and I mean, it was really the American Kennel Club, if you remember, was one of the sponsors of it, and just everything came together, but not by magic. It took a lot of work.
Oh, it did. And that's what I've always loved, certainly retail, because I love to talk, and, introducing, yourself to new people and your brand, and kind of cohesively folding in something that seems like two very different, brands and opportunities, and having them work together, and then raising money for a good cause, and having something be a shopping event. It worked out perfectly. But that actually brings me to the point of, what about that book? So it's written about how, your neighbors kind of came together, to kind of form this unlikely family. And it's such a touching story. And what made you think that there was a book there?
Well, I didn't originally.
Okay.
I wrote an article for a magazine. I don't know if you remember, Family Circle was a big women's magazine. Well, I was one of their reporters, and I told them about this woman down the hall who I'd become so close to, an older woman, and how my dog went there every single day. And eventually I wrote an article for this national magazine about the relationship between this woman, her husband, my dog, and me, and this little 3-year-old boy down the hall, and his dad. Well, we became like a little family, and we would have dinner together every night, and have lots of fun together. And the dog was kind of the glue.
Mhm.
She would run from my apartment down to their apartment, and it was published. And then after 9/11, I wrote a part 2 of that about what happened after 9/11. And then 8 years went by, and my dog Katie actually died. It was not until 8 years later that I thought, I went to a publisher one day and I told him the story, and he said, that should be a book.
Oh.
And that's how it became a book. It wasn't
Okay.
my idea.
Okay.
It was his idea. He said, I know you can turn that into a book. So that's how the book came about. And the book is not about the dog.
Right.
And it's really not about me. It's about what can happen when in this world, oftentimes people feel lonely or alienated, and they may not have their biological family nearby,
Yeah.
but they can create their own family from their friends and neighbors and whoever. And the point of the book was you could create, by sheer accident, a little cohesive group that would provide so much support and fun. And so that's one of the points of the book. And the other thing is that in this book, it's a happy book for the first half. It's called Katie Up and Down the Hall. But the second half of the book, things begin to go wrong. After 9/11, my dog is not feeling so well. The woman down the hall is not feeling so well. The little boy and his father move away. And then one day, it's all gone.
Yeah.
And it was very difficult for me. And that's in the book as well. But the idea of the book is that there's always another door down the hallway, metaphorically speaking, that might open to you. So even if that door is closed, there is another one possible. And that's why I ultimately did get another dog. It did take me a rather long time to do it. 8 years. I waited, I waited 8 years. I don't do things that quickly. But the book came out and it seemed to touch a chord with people.
It did.
And it still does. There's something about it. I always say this, it has nothing to do with me. It has to do with the relationships between the people. And what you do in your mind is you just superimpose what you're reading onto your own situation. We all might have had a grandmother or a grandfather or, a pet or a neighbor. So you can transpose what's in the story to your own life, and hopefully there's a lesson in it about loss.
Well, you're a wonderful storyteller and you're a very warm person. And I think, you may not realize that it's your heart that you bring to the story. It's someone that, yes, our paths crossed, certainly due to a work event. But even though social media makes it easier to keep in touch, you don't have to keep in touch with people. But you're a warm person. You're someone that I wanted to keep in contact with, even if it's from the outside, just sort of looking what you're up to. But like you said, pointing out the fact that family is what you make it. And sometimes you're blood related and sometimes you're not. And the fact that it validates the loss of a pet, because there's a lot of people, myself included, I never thought I would get another dog after my chocolate lab. And when my uncle got sick, we adopted his dog, and now it's a loss that I can't quite, sometimes catch my breath. But speaking, the way you wrote the story, it sort of lends credence to that feeling. And I think, you just have that way about you. And you may not want to give yourself credit, but I will.
Well, thank you, Jamie. I appreciate it. And
it's true.
I do understand how you feel about your dog, because it's a living creature. Dogs have a personality. My dog had a great spirit and energy up until almost literally the last moment.
Yes.
And it's difficult. I don't like it when people say to me, "Oh, are you going to get another one?" It's like if your child died, you wouldn't say, "Are you getting another one?" It's not like replacing the tire on a car, So no, I'm not ready for that.
No, it's so true, because I know there's so many animals, but specifically dogs in this instance, that need good homes. And part of me wants to go get 50 million of them and bring them all home. But I know, I can't, because like you said, I'm replacing, this little shadow of mine that was always on the sofa over there while I was filming. And she just, I talked to her all day long, and it's like I lost my little best friend, and it's not as easy as just going to get a new one, even though I know there's so many that need a home. But you said it so well. And if we can, pivot before we go, in this day and age, right, that celebrities now have their own, podcast platform, or they have their own Instagram or Facebook, things like that, do you feel like they are still in need of that other voice to tell their story? Or do you feel like, with AI and the algorithms and everything that's going on, have we lost some of what you did so well with, telling the story in a way that, isn't told anymore? I feel like that might be a lost art.
Well, I actually pivoted. I got out of celebrity interviewing a while ago because you're right. People were telling their own stories in various ways, and it became kind of tawdry. It became kind of like the National Enquirer kind of tabloid journalism and stuff. So what I was doing, where I would actually get an exclusive with somebody, that doesn't really happen anymore, because there's no such thing because these people are just speaking for themselves on Instagram or wherever. So since the Katie book, I've actually written like almost 30 other books, collaborating with many of them business people or all kinds of people on their life stories.
As a ghostwriter, right?
Well, you could say that,
okay.
But yes, it's true, but more as a collaborator, because a lot of them have my name on the front cover.
Right.
So I'm not a total ghost, but I really, as I tell people, whether you put my name on the front or not, I really don't even care. At this point, I don't care. The only thing that I cared about is you have to pay the fee, obviously, for me to write the book. That's the most important thing, of course. But I have done all these books, but now I'm stopping all that. I'm going to another period. I don't know if I told you this, but in June, I was in a serious bike accident.
No.
And it was just a few weeks after my dog died, and I had a hemorrhaging in the brain, and I broke my right knee. Yeah, this was just in June.
Oh gosh!
But I'm feeling really well. But it was a wake-up call that I think I had done enough writing. And although I've made a great recovery from this, the doctor said, you may not want to write any more books for maybe 6 to 8 months. I said, forget about the 6 to 8 months thing. How about we just skip the whole thing? So I'm finally free. I'm no longer having to prove myself that, oh, yes, I can, either do this interview with this famous person or write a book. I think at this point, I want to have more fun.
Okay. So
we've come full circle from, where I started to where I landed, and then literally landed, from that accident. And it just made me realize, I think 35 books is enough.
It's an incredible accomplishment. What does fun look like to you? What if you could just do anything? Anything was possible. What does your ideal next chapter look like?
I think just my most fun times are really going out to dinner with friends, or maybe going on a trip somewhere. Just the simplest things. And of course, maybe getting another dog at some point, because that was a lot of fun. As you know, when you have a dog, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, the world sees you in a different way. Even in my own neighborhood, do you feel it's different walking, with Lucy or without her? And just like walking without Plum, sometimes I'll get a hello or a good morning or whatever. But when she was there, oh, what kind of dog is that? And then they'd, if there was another dog, you're seen in this different way when you've got a cute pup with you.
Yes, a dog is like a passport to sociability, and wherever you go. And wherever you go, people want to come up to you because they want to see your dog. And I kind of miss that, yes. When I go out without the dog, it's much less sociable, it seems like. So that's what fun could look like, yeah.
I love it. Well, I'm so thankful you're all right. And I could,
Thank you.
sort of talk to you forever about all the stories. And the project that you said you were part of, a Katharine Hepburn documentary that's coming out.
It is out.
It is
It's
out. Okay.
called. It's on Netflix. There's a
Okay.
bunch of them, but one
And
of
I'll
them's
link
called.
all of this at the end in the show
Oh,
notes.
sure.
I'll link your
Oh,
book
sure.
and then the docu. But sorry, go ahead.
There's three that I'm thinking of. There's two on Elizabeth Taylor, and there's one on Katharine Hepburn called Call Me Kate. Call Me Kate, and that's on Netflix. And
Okay.
the Elizabeth Taylor ones, I think they're both, one of them's called The Lost Tapes, and I can't remember what the other one's called, but
Okay.
on my home page, they're all on there. There's also
Yeah.
one on Audrey Hepburn, and there's one on Horowitz, and there's one on Trump. There's about 5 or 6 of them, but they're all on the homepage.
Okay. Yeah, and I'll link all of that as well. Because like I said, I wanted us to kind of have a conversation that we couldn't necessarily find on your website. And just as if, like any of my episodes, I want it to be as if somebody parachuted in and I'm sitting just opposite you in your living room, just eavesdropping on two friends kind of catching up. But do you still play the piano? That's a great question.
It is a good question. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but no, I don't. I imagine something's being such an important part of your life, and then suddenly you really kind of don't do it anymore. And maybe I should have kept up with it. I don't know, but it just, I had reached my, what do you call that? Your saturation point, you know.
And did your mom, I'll let you go on this, did your mom ever make peace with the fact that you quit piano and pivoted? I'm assuming she was pretty darn proud of you.
Oh, yes. The day that Elizabeth Taylor sent her perfume, and the day that Ivana Trump sent her a ring, and all the fun my mother had going to these,
the parties.
book events and seeing, her son's name in print and stuff like that. I think that's one of my happiest things about what I did, is that it gave her pleasure. Imagine how you would feel if you were a mother and, you had a kid who did this stuff. I think it made her feel good. So even though she's passed away, I think that she really had a good time with it. So she forgot about the piano after a while.
I bet she did. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much for taking the time today. And I appreciate your resilience. The audience won't know, but we had a little tech difficulty, but like two stubborn people who won't give up, we just kept going. And then here we are.
We did it. And it's so nice to see you again. And thank you for being such a good friend and for producing my book event, which was my best book event ever.
Well, I mean, if this is not the headline of my life, I don't know what is. I'm going to pin this all over. Oh, thank you so much.
You're funny, but thank you. I think I might have pressed the wrong button.
That is
but
okay. We can still hear you. And I very much appreciate your time. And we will see each other on social.
Thank you for putting all this effort into this. I really appreciate it. I know you have to do a lot of work to get it done. So thank you for doing it.
No, it was my distinct pleasure. And I hope the audience just loved you as much as I do, because you just have a way of telling stories that I could just listen to forever. So thank you so much.
You're so nice. And we'll talk again soon,
yes,
okay?
We will. All right. Be well, Glenn. And please keep me posted on your health, all right?
I will. Thanks again, Jamie. Stay well.
Take care.
Bye for now.
Bye.
I'll press the right button here somehow.
I love it.
I'm not sure. Oh, there, you pressed that.
Yeah, we just keep pressing.